Many young men have checked out of today's society. They have checked out of the game called life because they feel very unheard, and most of all, they are unseen by the mass population, by society, by their environment, by women, by their peers, and they just sort of float along in life as a loner, and not necessarily voluntarily either. These men have just sort of faded to black. And this goes beyond just the mating scene. It goes beyond the male-female dynamic, even though this is one of the most glaring problems of these men. And I will get right into it. This is a Tarek Talks Midnight podcast. Sit down, relax, and enjoy. Many men have just checked out altogether from society, from their environment, from interacting with people, because they do not feel welcome by a large amount of people. These young men, usually growing up, it starts young. They grow up in school and they just never really seem to fit in anywhere, whether it was because of their physical appearance, whether it was because of social awkwardness, or just whatever cards life dealt them. They just always had a hard time connecting to other people. And this progresses on into age. Some men break out of it in a sort of butterfly kind of tale where they're in a shell when they are younger, but they build themselves up, get themselves to the best version of themselves, and they have a very prosperous and a very happy social life. But some stay in this state of being in a cocoon. They stay silent, they stay hidden, and eventually they fade to black, especially when it comes to dealing with the opposite gender. They never really had a good standing with the opposite gender for whatever reason. Could have been for physical, their appearance, their social skills. For whatever reason it was, they just never really fit in. And these type of men have been around for as long as history has been written, and probably even before that, since the start of mankind. But back in those days, it was less extreme because we were very tribal a long time ago, meaning even if someone was maybe not so desirable, he still had to interact with his tribe, with his small town, with his small community. And perhaps a person that nowadays would have been undesirable, would have been ostracized, he would have perhaps maybe have got a better shake in life because his tribesmen or his community or whatever you want to call it would have maybe almost forced him to find himself, so to speak, because a lot of young men had to go through rites. They had to become men because their survival depended on it. And no matter how much someone claims to be antisocial, no matter how much someone claims that they don't like interacting with human beings, we are creatures. We are social creatures. We are creatures of interaction. It is just a survival method. It's a survival mechanism, which is what I alluded to earlier. A human's survival depended on him networking, communicating, getting to know his tribesmen, getting to know his tribeswomen. It's his survival depended on it. But fast forward a couple of millennia, and that changed. We have more than ever a group of men that are isolated, that have just basically faded to black, faded to an oblivion. They walk around in life. They might go to the mall. They might go to the store. They might go to a shopping center, a grocery store, and they might as well not even have stepped foot in any of those establishments because no one even noticed them. And this is a harsh reality for some men. And this is no judgment to these men. This is no judgment to society, the environment, or the women who reject this man. This is no judgment on any of said characters. It is just an observation. And this is a very true reality for a lot of men. When they step outside their house, no one even notices. And it's very sad in nature. It is very sad in nature because, as I stated earlier in the video, we are very social. And when we were living thousands of years ago, we had to be in small tribes, meaning the only people that we knew was our immediate environment. So we had to interact with them. But fast forward, now we don't. Everyone is somewhat self-sufficient. Technology and jobs and industrialization, the ability to go buy food from supermarkets, the ability to buy anything you need from a touch of a button, is creating a society of isolation. Now, this society is not all bad. It does have its perks. But one of the downsides, of course, is the isolation. This is why we have men that have been sort of forgotten more than we have ever had in record numbers because of this phenomena of isolation. Now you can do everything at a touch of your fingers. Most people don't even have to physically go to work anymore. So there is no need for a lot of these men to even step outside. And with that comes consequences. There comes side effects. These men are very introverted. And when I say introverted, I don't mean it in the way that someone that is introverted, but they still go out and attempt. No, these guys are pretty much hermits. They stay inside. And if their social skills were bad to begin with, now their social skills are completely diminished because they have no need to use them. And playing video games and talking to people online does not count, unfortunately, for a lot of these men. And so with that, these young men, they step outside into the real world and they are not even recognized. They can literally go to different places, and it is if they never even step foot outside. No one really knows. If they were inside of a room surrounded with 10 other men, people would only have said they saw 10 men, when in fact it was 11, because this guy was ostracized for whatever reason, for maybe his attraction level was not up to par. Maybe he doesn't fit the beauty standard. Maybe his social skills are very awkward. Maybe he looks very awkward. Maybe he looks like, and I hate using this word and I'm not using it in a derogatory term, but he looks like an outcast. And it's unfortunate because a lot of these men are struggling greatly with interacting with the opposite sex, as I have stated earlier. Their mating life is pretty much non existent. They would love to have someone that is by their side. They would love to have a young woman by their side. But it is extremely hard for these men. Even developing a group of peers is extremely hard for these men. These men don't even have any male friends. And a huge part of this is, like I stated earlier, a lot of these young men do not step outside into the real world. They have no hobbies. And if their social skills were a little bit on the awkward side, it just completely diminishes as they get older, because they have all of these self-medicating or self-sedating methods that they can use. They can just retreat to their home and hop on their phone and hop on a video game, and they have hours of entertainment. But this entertainment will never, ever replace human interaction. So the consequence of that is no social life. And this is a common problem. It is a very ever-growing problem. And see, the thing about it is that I am not making excuses for these young men. But let us take a female that is somewhat socially awkward. It would still be so much easier for her to develop friends and a circle to some extent, especially if she looks somewhat attractive, even if she is average, and even if some cases she is just below average. And a reason for that is because the only thing she has to do is maybe put on a little bit of makeup, maybe put on a dress that is somewhat a little more tight, keep herself in fair shape, and she can literally walk outside by herself to a restaurant, to a lounge, to a bar, and someone or multiple people, let's be realistic, if she is somewhat attractive, multiple men will come up and talk to her. Hell, multiple women will come up and talk to her. I have seen this with my own eyes. Yes, when women go out, even other women approach them. And yes, sometimes it is in a romantic type of way, or borderline romantic type of way. I have literally seen women buy other women drinks. Let's say if there was a woman by herself, or hell, maybe even if she was with another friend, another woman would buy her a drink. I have seen this so many times. So it is much easier for a young lady to get attention to find a mate. Let's take, on the other hand, a young man that is somewhat average or below average, and his social skills are not that good. If he steps outside, if he goes to a restaurant, or if he goes somewhere by himself, he might not even get approached. People will just walk right past him. And this is not for all men. Let me get this straight. Let me clarify this. I'm not making this some kind of doom and gloom video, but let's face the hardcore facts. This is a lot of men. If a man was to go outside, if one of these men that have checked out of society, or society deem them as an outcast, if they step outside by themselves, no one would even notice them. If this young man stepped into a bar, the bartender, if he was asked if he's seen that young man, he would most likely say no. And it sounds very harsh, but it is very true. For some reason, something about these men makes them invisible to society. But this should not deter them. There is light at the end of the darkness. With that being said, be blessed and never fade to black.